Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fresno Greeks podcast. My name is Aiden Garagardo, the host, and I am here with one of the lovely Lambda Sigma Gammas and future ASI president, Karen Carrillo. Karen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. I'm glad to have you on. So Karen is a proud member of Lambda Sigma Gamma sorority, crossing this past fall, 2022. She served this year as the executive vice president for ASI, and she is the current president-elect for next year's ASI presidency. Karen, want to tell you a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am a fourth year going on to my fifth and hopefully last year at Fresno State. Majoring in Chicano studies and currently pursuing a certificate in legal studies. My aspirations are to one day become an attorney, primarily like in the criminal justice system. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
So you've spent the majority of this year serving in the executive vice president role. However, this is your third consecutive year in office of some capacity. What got you into leadership? Did it start when you were younger? Did it start from you in high school? What sparked your interest in leadership at a higher level?
I think I've always just been getting involved. I think it started first like just not wanting to be at home. So it's like I need to get myself involved as much as I can so I'm not at home. But I think as I started to surround myself more into like leadership groups or opportunities, I grew very fond to it and I learned to love it. So yeah, I think my first student government affiliated group that I ever joined was in third grade in the student council. It was very basic. We sold Smencils. Like that's what we were doing. Like it was like very basic stuff, nothing like serious. We were just third graders. It wasn't until again in I think it was eighth grade, I moved to a new school and I just wanted to be a little bit more involved again. And I ran for vice president. I was like the new girl as well. I didn't think I was gonna get it, but I ended up getting it. I took a break a little bit in high school with student government things, but I was more focused in advocacy than anything.
Yeah.
So either I was asked to do speeches in certain events, whether it was for March for Our Lives, Black History Month. I was very involved in advocacy, and I also participated in speech and debate where I was able to write my own I guess you can say advocacy or any speech that I wanted to, surrounded on anything, and I would compete with other schools in tournaments. Last 2 years became vice president once again, and I knew that I wasn't done yet. I'm a Fresno native, a very proud Fresno native. So when I was enrolled at Fresno State, I knew that I wanted to branch out and just continue to do what I've grown fond to.
Yeah, sounds great. So you obviously for students that are coming into Fresno State, you can't serve in a leadership role your freshman year on campus because you didn't have a chance to be elected. However, coming into Fresno State, you spent your freshman year here. When did you know that you were going to want to be in ASI? Did you know from the beginning? You're like, okay, that's my goal, that's my end game.
Yeah. So I knew my summer going into college, actually, I was just wondering because I was like, it was my last year at Bullard High School, and I was like, I want to continue doing what I do. So I just looked it up. I was like, there's no way that colleges do that because student government sounds very like leadership style, doing events. I was like, there's no way that colleges also do student government. So I remember just searching it up on Google, like a quick search. I was like, Fresno State student government. And then that's when I found found the ASI logo, and I knew that there was student government. So I knew that the next time there was an expo event where people table and stuff, that I had to find the ASI table. So I found it, and I actually met with with that year's EVP, and I grew a relationship with him over the years. But yeah, the plan was always become senator, become a vice president. I didn't know at the time what position yet, but I knew I had to become a vice president, and then my last and final year become president. So I just worked my way up over the years.
So of course, your first year getting elected on campus, we're both the same year. So we were during the COVID year, and you ran for election for ASI, but that coincided to hit right as the pandemic took off. How was that like campaigning right at the beginning? Like this was your, obviously you made connections and everything, but it was your introduction, and you're like, okay, this is my introductory year, and then your campaign ended up being mostly online, and then your first term ended up being mostly online. How did that impact you think?
It impacted me very drastically, emotionally, mentally, and then academically. So to be serving in a position as well where students will rely on me was very, very overwhelming. Luckily, though, I think because I was my first year when we were at the peak of the pandemic and we were still practicing social distancing, I was the senator for resident affairs and I was living at the dorms. So I had that advantage to be surrounded by students, even though we were still practicing social distancing at the best of our ability. We were still trying to create like some kind of social events or provide resources to our students so they wouldn't feel as alone or felt like they didn't have anything to do. So I think I had a little bit more of an advantage at that. However, I do think I was still like navigating the ropes because I reflect on it and I think like I feel like I could have done more, but I think I also have to sometimes like be easy on myself and be like, I was also a student at the same time, and I was also like suffering through the same like mental tolls that other students were going through. So yeah, to say the least, it was hard. It was really hard.
Absolutely, I understand that. So you obviously did your first year through the pandemic, and then coming into your second year after getting reelected, you got to serve in person for the first time. Do you think that was a better experience? Was it different? How was that for you?
The transition was also pretty hard. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. Like we were transitioning to go virtual, and it took a lot of us of adapting. And then when we finally got used to it, we went back into person, and then we had to go through another transition and adapt once again to go in person. Because I feel like a lot of people think like, oh, we just go back to the way things were. It didn't. Like we didn't. We lost a whole like over a year, almost 2 years. We lost things, and some of us learned that we were homebodies. A lot of other people learned that no, they miss the outdoors. They'll never take it for granted again. So yeah, it was a lot for us to continue to navigate and adapt. However, I do think the transition was a little bit more easier for me on my end, just because I've always had that passion of student engagement, wanting to see students participate and reaching out to students. However, the rate of like how many students were participating were very low compared to like before the pandemic, of course. So yeah, just marketing was a little bit hard, and reaching out to students was also a little bit hard. Like finding that interest with our students was a little bit difficult.
I understand. Yeah, and so the sort of exchange between your first and second year in ASI was a big change. However, your exchange between your second and third was in its own right too. Considering that your second year in ASI, having served on that Senate with you, we went through, I believe, 4 different EVPs. Did you know when you were running for Senate at large the third time, were you like, okay, I want to be EVP just to provide some stability, or was there like, did you know beforehand, like when you were running, that you wanted to do that?
So yeah, we did go through 3 to 4 EVPs. Our first cohort, well, the cohort that we served together. I knew by my second term, I knew that I wanted to be EVP, because like you mentioned, like I wanted to provide that same stability. I think I was very fond of reaching out to students. The reason I didn't run for EVP my second term was because I didn't get that chance my first term, considering that it was all virtual. So I was like, oh, we're now in person. And I also still didn't feel ready to fill in the shoes of an EVP position. So it was a little bit more of those things where it's like, I want it, but I know right now is not my time. So I just wanted to learn a little bit more about the position, because it is a different dynamic. When you're a senator, you're serving the student at large. When you're EVP, you're serving your Senate, which is a little bit more different. Like it's more behind the scenes. And people sometimes think like, oh, like you can still do both and stuff like that. It is a little bit harder. It is a little bit harder to focus on my own initiatives and own projects, and that was really hard for me to let go. However, I knew like for my third term, I wanted to give back. I wanted to, everything that I've learned in the last 2 years at that time, I wanted to give that to the senators that we have today so they can pursue their own projects and initiatives.
So, yeah, and so of course, as EVP, your role in serving the senators is great, but you also still had some projects of your own this year, mainly the most recent one of the food voucher program for students. How did that idea come about? It's been pretty successful as in its launch, and so how did that idea come about, and how do you plan to expand on that next year?
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting because this idea was not my idea from the start. It was actually the EVP from my first cohort when we were when it was during the pandemic, excuse me, and he had presented it to me because I was the senator for resident affairs, and he thought I was like the perfect senator to take on this project. But he presented it to me, telling me like we want to provide food vouchers or some kind of way for students to obtain a free meal from the dining services. However, at that time, the dining services was only limited to the students who were living at the dorms. So it wouldn't have made sense for us to pursue this initiative when we didn't know when the pandemic, when we would stop practicing social distancing. So it was presented, but we never pursued it because we just didn't know. Okay. And then the following year, when we came back in person, I wanted to pursue it, but once again, the dining services were only being provided to the dorm students, so I couldn't pursue it. However, that spring semester, I started to collect data in order to justify why I wanted to fund food vouchers to our students. For a whole year, actually, I was collecting data. I was able to survey over 100 students, and it was this spring semester when I finally presented it to my exec team in order for us to sign off the proposal. And yeah, I mean, it really stemmed from EVP Katab, former EVP Katab, excuse me, when he presented it to me. However, I did grow very passionate in wanting to reduce the food insecurity that we have here at Fresno State. I think a lot of students don't know the few but yet many resources that we have here, such as the Student Cupboard, Project Hope. Student Cupboard even helps you to apply with EBT, and a lot of students don't know how to apply to EBT. So yeah, I noticed that there's just a lot of students, and I also just resonate a lot as a student myself who also suffers from food insecurity. I knew if other students also go through it, like I wanted to help them out. So yeah. That's how it all came out to be. This is actually the last week that we'll be providing food vouchers. This was just a pilot program, but my plan is for next year to potentially fund a little bit more to get more food vouchers to distribute, and also make accommodations after looking at the feedback that our students will be providing after I send out a survey to them. I hope that with this next semester, I'm hoping that it will be the last semester that we run it as a pilot program, because I want to present this to higher up administrators or even like the president himself, so he can see that this is a demand and it is being used. Could we get more funding? Is that a possibility? Because this initiative is bigger than what ASI can handle. As much as we would love to fund more food vouchers, we can't sustain it. It's not financially feasible. But yeah, the plan right now is just one more semester of funding it through ASI, and then presenting it to higher up administrators.
Oh, sounds good. Yeah, so you had mentioned earlier that you essentially worked your way up through the chain of command through ASI, through elections and everything. At what point this year, was it before that, did you know that president was going to be your goal, that was going to be ultimately where you wanted to end up here?
Yeah, so as a freshman, when I was first running for senator, I knew that I wanted to build myself up. I knew I was like, I want to become president at one point. And this year actually was supposed to be my last year. I was supposed to graduate this spring, but plans changed. But however, last spring, I still thought I was graduating in the year of 23. So I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna just end up as EVP. Like, that's fine. Plans change. It was fine. I was okay with being executive vice president. But during the fall semester, I realized, yeah, I'm not graduating on time. Quotations on time. When I knew that I was going to be here for an extra year, I was like, maybe presidency is in my path, because I don't know if you remember, but I was actually interim president during the summer because the president that was elected had to be removed because they weren't academically qualified to have that position. So when that happened, I was interim president, and I was practically given the opportunity and the chance to take on that position. And as much as I always knew I wanted it, I knew it wasn't my time. Once again, I knew it just wasn't my time yet. It just felt too easy. It literally laid on my lap. But I was just so focused on this EVP position that I was like, no, like if I'm meant to be president, I know I'll become president. Like I know.
So was that more of a sense of you felt like you didn't earn the position, you felt like you needed to be voted in, or was it more of like you wanted to focus on the position you were elected for?
It was more of just I mean, because I don't want people to think like I doubted myself. Like I don't think I have what it takes to become president because obviously I have the position now. But I think a year ago just wasn't quite ready for it yet. Yeah, because and I was vocal about it too with the cohort this year that if they felt strongly that I should be serving as president, then I'll do it. Like, but of course our VPEX. Caroline Alvarez stepped up, and the Senate felt comfortable also appointing her after I had expressed that I didn't want to take the position. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if it has so much to do with like not having like elected like every other senator or every other position like how they traditionally are. I just think I just wasn't ready at the time, and I still think that now looking at it, like I'm ready. I can take on this. Yeah.
Yeah. So of course now you went through and obviously ran for this, and you won the Fresno State Student Spoke. How was the campaign trail? How was the campaign season?
It actually went really smooth. I'm not gonna lie. I was pretty concerned because every year there was always something. Something would always happen. But no, we both ran a very clean and fair campaign. I think we both got very creative too. He created a website on his end. I personally, like, I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty down bad to like get this position. On the last day of election, I walked around campus with a poster, just holding it. And it said, make sure, I don't remember what exactly it said, but it basically was just saying, like, make sure to vote Carrillo. Ballot was sent through your email. And I literally walked around the whole campus just holding it. I wasn't talking to nobody. I didn't say a word or anything like that. If students were looking at me, like, we made eye contact, like, yeah, I would, like, say something to them, like, oh, like, make sure you vote. But pretty much I was just walking around all campus, like, doing that. I made buttons, stickers. I know that he was filling up all the tables from, like, the USU and RSU with, like, small little flyers too. Oh, I think, yeah, and his banner, I can't forget about his banner. He had a really, like, big banner that he was able to fit it in one table. And, yeah, students would just walk by, and I thought that was really smart, too. So, like I said, I think we were both very creative.
Yeah, sounds good. And so, of course, when you were on the campaign trail, you gave ideas and projects that you want implemented. One of those, of course, being the food voucher project. Are there any other projects in which you see right now you're going to start the track to try to implement them in sometime in your term?
Yeah, so something that I want to work towards too, and I also just want to really quickly emphasize, like, nothing is promised, but this is what I want to work towards too. So I recognize that our CSU system works a lot different from other UCs. However, I did just get intel that there's actually another CSU, I forgot which one it was, I think it was Stanislaus, that they accept EBT through one of their little like student stores. Yeah. So the one that we have here is Pause and Go. So what I want to do is to be able to have that implemented here as well. For students to be able to use their EBT card to buy cold food, because you can buy hot foods with your EBT. So that would be like sandwiches, milk, or salads, or anything really. Whatever EBT can purchase, if it's cold, like you should be able to purchase it like any other regular store. So yeah, I did already address this with the Food Service Advisory Committee that I sit on currently. They did tell me at the time that it was something that they were looking into, but I haven't really heard back from them on whether or not it is something that we can start pursuing. But that was before I received intel from one of the CSU trustees that there's another CSU campus that already does that. So my plan is now to reach out to them and see how is it that they're sustaining it, because I do recognize that there is like a financial worry of like would the school be losing money, or I'm not really educated on how EBT works or anything like that, like how do businesses make gain when customers use an EBT card. But again, like it's all I have to just do the research. So yeah, that's one of my other goals. And then another one would be pushing the dining services to have the dining hall open during spring break, because it's not open during the break. So I know that this year our current president was able to add more hours to the student cupboard on Saturdays. I think it's only from 12 to 2, so I think it's only 2 hours that it's open, or 12 to 4. I'm not too sure. And ASI is actually paying the student employees. So I'm hoping to follow her outline that she used for this to hopefully be able to pursue it with having having open hours during spring break with the dining hall.
Yeah, that sounds great. So, of course, in your past 3 years in ASI and serving this last year's EVP role, you formed some connection to the current Fresno State administration, especially now that you are going to be president now. Do you feel that you can kind of rely, or do you feel like you have some kind of connection to the current Fresno State administration that would help you to be able to pursue the projects that you want to do?
I think that's still a work in progress, to be honest. Because I still think, like, sometimes I feel like I'm still 16.
Yeah.
So to talk to administrators, sometimes it's a little bit scary for me. My current exec team, there's 2 of them who can talk to them like if they were besties.
Yeah.
I don't know how they could do that. Like, it's really hard for me to do that because I want to still have, like, that respect. And I'm not saying, like, my execs don't have the respect from these administrators, but I just feel like I would lose that because I don't know if I know how to respect boundaries or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I get that.
So I haven't really gotten like really close relationships right now with administrators. However, one who I would say I can confide with the most would probably be the president. He's honestly so friendly and he always has ears for his students. And every time when we see each other, he always greets me. He always gives me a smile, a hug, and he's always listening to like whatever it is that I'm currently working on and stuff. Always asking me questions and always being really, really supportive. So I anticipate really great things from President Jimenez Sandoval.
Yeah, sounds good. So what we're going to do right now is just shift away from ASI related stuff on your leadership background and more towards your role in Greek life. So, of course, coming in to Fresno State, everybody has their initial perceptions of Greek life and what it was. What were your initial perceptions of Greek life, and what were some of the stigmas that you had heard and thought about once you entered school?
So, to be like fully transparent, and it's only because I know there's people out there who, when they saw my post, when I finally was able to publicize that I was a proud member from Lambda Sigma Gamma, I just know there was people like, bruh, like, wasn't she talking crap on sororities?
Nah, I get you.
Yeah, no. My initial transparent, I guess, thoughts about sororities. I thought they were cults, bruh. I thought they were cults. I thought they were like, I would always say like, bro, you're paying to have friends. Like, what the heck? That's crazy. And yeah, like, or like it was all, I always affiliated them with like drugs, alcohol and stuff, like, and obviously like they already had a negative stigma on my part when my freshman year there was that sexual assault case that happened. So that was my first year as at Fresno State, and like you can't, I feel like, cut me some slack when like I say like why I have this perception on Greeks.
No, it's totally
like,
valid.
We didn't have a good image at the time. And yeah, so that was my initial thoughts on Greek life. And then it wasn't until I think during the pandemic when I started to seek sororities, and I was just like, you know what, like, I started to search up because I was like, there's no way that I didn't know that Panhellenic was called Panhellenic at the time. But I knew about their fees and everything. I'm just like, there's no way that those are the only sororities that we have at Fresno State. So I don't know. Again, I feel like my brain sometimes just says like, search it up, right? Because this is the same thing that I did with ASI. I just searched it up. I searched up Latina-based sororities. That's what I did. Yeah. And the first one that I think popped up was Alpha Pi Sigma. Okay. And they are a Latina-based sorority here at Fresno State. At least that's what I had found in their description at the time. So it started off there. And then I think it was like 2 weeks later. Again, I feel like the stars aligned for me sometimes because it was 2 weeks later when a member from Lambda Sigma Gamma reached out to me. I've never spoken to this girl. I have never even I hadn't even expressed to anyone except for my boyfriend at the time that I was looking into maybe joining a sorority, because I never knew that there was multicultural sororities. I didn't know those existed. So when this member reached out to me, I was like, this is crazy. This is like meant to be, like this is crazy. So we spoke, we talked, and I was intrigued. And I did like the whole recruitment process. However, during that time, because this was in the fall of last year, so fall of 2021, yeah. I just didn't feel like I was still searching other sororities at the time, so I didn't follow through the process. But however, I still, every time when they had recruitment for the next 2 semesters, like I would go, and I grew more fond to the organization. So it wasn't until this last fall where I finally like committed and I crossed. Yeah. So my stigma and everything out the door. Like it's not the same anymore. Nowhere near. I honestly feel so blessed and so privileged to be part of this organization, and I truly say that I do rep my organization every day. I've gotten connections, not even through my own organization, but even through others as well. Mm-hmm. You create connections. They are also a resource to you. A couple of them, actually, a member from another fraternity helped me with my campaign videos. Mm-hmm. My own sorority sisters helped me fund some of my campaign items as well that I needed, and other things too. And that's only to name a few, but a lot of organizations have been a resource to me, and it's not even just within my own. I think that's like the beauty behind joining Greek, because it's also a community. Like you're just not a member of your own organization, you also grow connections with others too.
I understand that. And yeah, just I feel like you're an interesting case, because as somebody that was already involved in Fresno State and involvement and through ASI, someone that already had commitments and other things like that, and to still rush Greek life, what stood out to you about Greek life in general that got you to get involved in another thing on top of what you already were doing?
Right. I think it was, so like I mentioned, I was first seeking it during the pandemic, and it was because at the time, like I just felt like so alone. I felt like wow, like I need an outlet, like I need some kind of like community. I'm not saying like ASI didn't feel like that, because ASI is also my community too, and also of course the student body, but I just felt like I needed like a backbone, like I needed someone who can support me, because I feel like what I was also involved in, I was supporting people. Oh yeah. So I wanted, and don't get me wrong, like I support my sorority sisters too as well. Yeah. But I feel like with this, we are reciprocating that. With ASI, it's more of a rewarding thing. Like you put in the work, and it's for because you're serving students. Within a sorority, like we were always helping one another. So yeah, I think I was just really alone, like every other student probably during the pandemic. And yeah, something that always resonated with me every time when I would go to the recruitment socials was that they always emphasize that they want us to find a home away from home. Yeah. And that really just resonated with me a lot, and I think that's what intrigued me to still pursue them even after a whole year.
That's great. And so you mentioned how they approached you during the pandemic and everything like that. But one of the things that we like to focus on is when you started really feeling the sisterhood and start trusting and forming those bonds with your sisters. Obviously, everyone does it going through the process, forming that with your line sisters or brothers, depending on which org you're in. And you develop it with them early on. But at what point after becoming an official member did you really feel the sisterhood and you're kind of like, oh, okay, like these people really do have my back. I can actually trust these people and trust more people than just the people you cross with?
Yeah. So for me personally, it took me like a lot. It took me a lot. I think even especially with my big, because I thought everything was just very, I know, like I said, like I seeked a sorority because I wanted to feel less alone and wanted to get that support. However, that support, that sisterhood, and that community has always been foreign to me. Yeah. Like I don't even talk to my own blood family, and it's because I've cut them all off for reasons, justified reasons. Yeah. So like I don't even talk to any of them. So for me to just willingly like open my arms and just accept like, oh yeah, you just have to just just listen to us, just trust us. It was just hard. Like I couldn't just do that. I couldn't just like, okay, I'll trust you guys just because you said so. So it took honestly a lot, and I think I'm still working on it as well, like just being open. But I want to say like again, like I want to redirect with my big, like she is someone who I struggled a lot to open up with. It was very awkward in the beginning too. Like she didn't even know, I remember like she didn't even know like how to really talk to me. She didn't know like if she would be overstepping. She didn't want to cross boundaries, I remember. But I really appreciated her patience, because I feel like any other person would have just given up. Because again, like I just had my guard and walls up, and I still kind of do in certain areas. However, I think when I felt like the sisterhood and I felt the community was again like during my campaign. I think during my campaign I felt like I had the most support, especially within my line sisters. They would come and help. They would come out and help me with my tabling. They would also pass out buttons. They would reshare my posts. So yeah, I think it was then. And then there's also other moments too, when I need something, or if anybody can be of support. Like there's always a sister who's willing to help you, and just as much as I am too. So I do reciprocate it. I'm never one to ask for something that I can give as well. So yeah, I think just giving them the opportunity is like it's a good way to start off. Just being a little bit more mellow and like letting them in. But yeah, I've just struggled a little bit.
No, I understand that. That's totally valid. And so, moving forward, give me 1 second. So you mentioned a little bit about how they've helped you feel included and stuff like that. Has there been any specific things that they've done for making you feel included? Are you someone that's more actions over words, things like that? You mentioned a little bit of what they've done, but how did your sorority make you feel included as a sister?
I mean, I am a person of action over words. Like, you can just tell me and I'll be like, okay. So I think, again, and I keep referencing my line sisters, and I think it's valid too, because you grow that relationship with them a lot more in comparison to, like, the older sisters. So my line sisters, they've always made me feel included, especially Ines and Leslie. I've always felt like the person who gets left out or gets forgotten and stuff. And this is more in the social aspect, by the way, not even the business aspect, but in the social aspect, like if they're gonna go out, have fun or whatever, they always reach out to me. They always ask me like, hey, like, do you want to come? And there's been plenty of times where I'm like straight up like, I had already made up my mind before they even asked me, and I'm like, no, I'm not going. And they will not take a no for an answer. Yeah. Sometimes they do. Okay, they do respect boundaries. But then there's one of those nights where it's like, girl, you have nothing going on tomorrow you're on the night. Fence, you're kind of like, right. So they'll drag me out. They'll come pick me up if they want me to come, you know. And I don't think I've ever had that really. Even also within my big and her blood sister as well. Those two girls. Again, like they're always wanting to make me feel inclusive. Anytime they notice anything that's even off on my character, they're always checking in like what's wrong and stuff. Like they'll make sure like to like try to figure it out. So yeah, I think that's something that once again is very foreign to me. I wasn't very lucky with friends growing up, like in high school or middle school or anything like that. And I'm crossing my fingers and knocking on wood that these are sisters until Omega, like we say. But yeah, they have definitely shown me a different aspect than any other person has ever shown.
That's pretty great. So to end things off here, of course, your sorority happens to be the largest multicultural sorority on campus, rivaling numbers in the Panhellenic sororities. What do you think stands out or makes Lambda Sigma Gamma stand out in comparison to other sororities? And what do you think is the big draw that gets a lot of girls interested in your sorority?
I'm not sure because every other organization on campus, they're so amazing and they're so wonderful. Their philanthropy, I'm so fond of them too. So every one of us has a very unique one, and they all serve their own purpose. Our pillars, I think all of us have very amazing pillars as well. So I'm not really sure what is it that attracts people to Lambda Sigma Gamma. I know we are very welcoming, and we always want to make sure like everyone is included, feels seen. I don't know, like I wish I had an answer, because I mean obviously like I didn't really seek other sororities when I was in the recruitment process. I really just like once I knew about Lambda Sigma Gamma, I just grew attached to it. So I mean I think it might just be our presence, really. We always say like we roll in deep. So it is a lot of us, and I think just like because our numbers are big, they feel like there is a bigger support here. However, I once again want to emphasize like every other organization here, they're amazing as well. And anyone who's like seeking and maybe being part of a sorority or a fraternity, like definitely explore your options always, because every one of us, we're doing our due diligence, and we're serving the best way we can within our organizations.
Yeah, I understand that. All right, I want to thank you, Karen, for coming on today, and I hope to see you again.
All right, thank you, Aiden. Thank you for having me.